Okay, so let's see here. For Timespy, we need to adjust a few things. Mainly, I believe 875 perhaps, because 880 didn't work on Timespy. And then 195 was the highest stable core clock for GPU for Timespy. So let's set that. Actually, can I save different profiles? So let's say 880 and 215. Save. No. But this one should be 875 and 195. Save. So I'm getting the same thing. Oh, wait, there's a load button. But it's the same value. Oh well. That's strange. Yeah, I think I finally managed. So profile 1 will be Firestrike here, and profile 0 is for Timespy. I think this should be enough. Yeah, 195 for sure, and then the memory clock, I think 875 should be plenty. So apply this, and let's go for Timespy. But now we don't know regarding Timespy, because well, if our system overclock or other settings, if they are fine or not for Timespy. VRAM, DRAM, system RAM, that is, CPU and Northbridge and all that stuff. Northbridge should be okay. CPU we don't know, because that's pretty much at the edge, I think. And memory might also be a bit on the edge there, so we'll just have to try and see. Oh dear. That didn't work. So we didn't see any artifacting, and we know that 195 on the core on the GPU should be fine. So yeah, it's definitely the overclock of the system, which is not stable enough for Timespy. Okay, so let's get into BIOS and adjust a few things for Timespy. Okay, so we don't know what is causing it. The Northbridge should be okay. The CPU and RAM speed, however, are question marks. So if I leave, the easiest thing to do to test this is to go from 47 to 46. So let's do that. 46. Okay, so now we are sort of in a safe range for the CPU. We can try memory. So let's just okay, system service exception. That's a bit different. So okay, we got that, even though we lower the CPU. So maybe it's memory. Okay, that's interesting. So let's set this back to 47. And if we drop this to 96, then we drop the CPU and the RAM a little bit. Or actually, no, let's set it 97, but we drop the RAM quite a bit. Like this. And try again. Yes, having dropped RAM quite a bit and leaving CPU frequency high and Northbridge remains high. So let's try this in a Firestrike, Timespy. Okay, starting Timespy. Let's see if this fixes our issue or not. We probably won't get any top scores now in Timespy since we lowered the system RAM speed quite a lot, but we just want to identify the root cause of the crashing. Whoops. It seems we crashed. Clock watchdog timeout. Yes, this means the CPU is unstable for this load. So clearly we're able to run Firestrike multiple times, no issues. And this time we didn't get that memory error, however, which we got past the second test, all the graphics tests. So I have to reset this. So I'm thinking the best thing for a Timespy is perhaps to set the memory timing back, or memory frequency back to 2060, was it? So let's see here. Yeah, right here, and then we simply lower the APU frequency one step to 96 maybe. So 96, that however, 96 times 21, yeah, we get Northbridge of 2016 megahertz, but we'll lower CPU frequency about 48 megahertz or so, and also the DRAM speed. And since we had issues with both DRAM and CPU speed, sort of at the edge there, of stability, maybe this will work for Timespy, because we lower the CPU speed and memory speed, and since we change the bus here, we unfortunately also lose a bit on the, basically, yeah, a bit on the north bridge as well. But I think this could be the best compromise between the choices that we have. For Timespy, that is. So if this works, I will save a BIOS profile for Timespy and for Firestrike, which gave the highest scores. If this regenerates a highest score, that is, in Timespy as well. And then we can use those BIOS profiles to benchmark other GPUs. So for instance, I'm very keen on the GTX 960 now, since we got such good scores. So yeah, let's get into 3D Mark and test Timespy. So that third benchmark test in Timespy, it's the CPU test. So since it failed with the Watchdog timeout BSOD, it pretty much means that that was a CPU. But when we lowered the RAM frequency, we got past both the graphics tests, so that I believe solved the problem in those two first benchmarks, especially the second one, which crashed. So yeah, let's go to Timespy now again and run it. Okay, so that's not good. Alright, still not enough. And the question is then, is it the CPU or is it the RAM? So if I lower the RAM again, and we keep the CPU at this speed, and we try just the CPU test in Timespy and see if that passes a couple of times, and if it does, then it was the RAM clock. So let's try that. So we go to Timespy and then custom run. Can I choose? Yeah, let's run just a CPU test now. Because we crashed not in the CPU tests. I think that was system RAM that crashed this time in the first graphics test. But let's see if the CPU is stable at 4512 megahertz. Yeah. So it seems to me we didn't crash this time, so we might have solved the CPU issue. And we got a CPU score of 2124. What CPU score did we have previously? So 2090. Yeah, so given that we had 2090 points for CPU previously as highest in Timespy, we now have 2124. It's an increase, at least. So yeah, but okay, now that we know this, let's get back into BIOS again. Okay, so what approach should we take for Timespy? Well, I'm thinking if we continue to lower this, say 95, right? We get a DRAM speed of 2026, and then we raise this one to 48. Then we get 4560 megahertz, and that is too high for being stable. However, the North Bridge frequency, let's see here, 21 times 95, yeah, that's 2 gigahertz only. But if we lower this to 94 B clock, we get 2005 megahertz on the RAM, 4512 on the CPU speed, which we tested now, and that worked with the current voltage. And then we can at least raise this one, so we set it to 2200 times 94, that's 2068. So it's not the fastest CPU speed. We could of course try to raise voltage even more to CPU, but I don't think we gain anything more there. So I believe if this works, it's probably as good of a compromise we can make. Of course, unless we go back to having, let's see here, 106. But then we're only at 1978 RAM. But then we can set 44, 45, no, 44, 43. That's still 4558. Yeah, that's not. No, I think that 94, 2005 megahertz, 48, and 2200. My suspicion, my feeling is that this should work, even though we lose some speed on DRAM and CPU we keep at 4512, we gain a few megahertz on North Bridge, which might compensate us for the loss of points there. So let's see if this works. This didn't give us the highest scores on Firestrike. However, since Timespy is more of a taxing load, we must somehow lower the settings so that it can pass. And I think that this might be one of the better ways to do it. Let's give it a run, basically, and keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, while that starts, we can have a look at results section. 7850K, 950 Timespy. So let's see here. We're still at top position. So the score to beat is 2149. Graphics score 2160, CPU score 2090. So yeah, let's go for it. Okay, standard run. Let's hope this works now. Okay, but we didn't crash, you think? So we might get a score. 2149 is the score to beat. And yeah, we did 2157. So that's good. A new world record. And let's compare with our previous scores. Okay. So as we can see here, we have 2157 points. The GPU score of 2165 is in line with our previous highest scores. So when we got 2149, we had a GPU score of 2160. So now we have 2165. And CPU is up substantially from 2090 to 2116, and we actually passed the test. So I will do a rerun off camera just to see in which direction it heads. And a thing worthy of note is that since the scores are in the 2000s here instead of 5000 or 6000 now that we beat that in Firestrike, percentually an increase of say 8 points here is of course larger than 8 points in Firestrike. So that's worthy of note, about more than the double. So if the scores are set the same way, but yes, so I'll do a rerun and just see where we end up. So let's do that. So I did a rerun, and unfortunately it crashed in the second graphics test. So I would suspect that the memory is still an issue, and maybe even the north region, I don't know. But I'm thinking then, how about go to 93? That gives us a memory frequency of 1983 megahertz. But then we set this to 49, and now we're a bit high up there again. 22 would give us north breach of 2046. So and then we raise this to 0.17 0.172 175, Yes, so we shouldn't run that for a very long time straight, but I want to see if this works. No, okay, I will see if I can make sure we can get into BIOS. Okay, we're booting. So I had to clear BIOS. So let's get to advanced mode, and I will apply OC profile. Let's see here. Load from profile. We have the Firestrike one, but how about I have something called bclock 105 stable. It's number 4. $105. Okay, yeah, but this was a while ago. Let's load the Firestrike. So that's number 6. Alright, let's start from here again. So, yeah, 94 was no good. 106 was the highest stable B clock, and 94 is the lowest stable B clock, or sort of stable with these settings. So if we set 106 and then 45, 42, 43, 4558 megahertz. Okay. The DRAM dials back to 1978, so that shouldn't be an issue anymore. So 1900. And then if we can stabilize the CPU by saying 0.175. Yeah, so the CPU will be the question mark here then at 4558. But we have increased the voltage a little bit here, so yeah, and we still had problems with the RAM. So now we're booting. So yeah, B clock limits is also a thing. So yes, we have 2014 on Northbridge. We have 4558 megahertz, and RAM is dialed back. Great. Let's hope for the best and anticipate the worst. Nope. That's no good. That's no good at all. So, what is it then? Timespy is a bit of an issue here. So, I'm thinking we'll keep the higher CPU voltage. We'll lower the frequency of the B clock to 103 and set the APU multiplier to 44, so we get a CPU frequency of 4532. At the same time, we are pretty low now on the DRAM about 100 MHz lower than we tried previously with a one successful run. The North Bridge frequency of 2000 here should give us 2080 effectively, so maybe this will work. Posting at least. Right, so it didn't crash, but I suspect that its score will be lower. 2147. So 2147, yeah, that's 10 points lower. But let's see what actually the numbers show. Yeah, actually it isn't that bad, because 2147. So this was clearly unstable. On a rerun. So this, even though we got the highest points here, let's say we choose another GPU and we apply these settings in BIOS for the system, then we don't know what will be crashing our system. Is it the system settings or the GPU settings? Right now we know for the GTX 950 which settings work, but for another GPU it might be a bit hard to figure that out. So if this is stable, I will do a rerun, and if this is stable, then it will be good. And for instance, GPU score 2146, we had 2160 at some point and 2165 last time, which was unstable though on the rerun. CPU score, however, is 2159, which is higher than we had on our highest run. And yeah, but basically 10 points off from the highest and 2 points off from the second highest. So I'll do a rerun and we shall see what that gives us. So I will do it off camera. Nope, we actually crashed again. So yeah, what is it this time then? Yeah, TXGI call, okay. Yeah, so I'm loading another preset that worked previously, and I don't know, these settings are way down from what we used on Firestrike, so I'm a bit amazed that if they work, or and the others don't. But let's leave it and run 3D Mark. I'll run it off camera and then we'll see how we end up. So yeah, it seems that this particular error DX GI call. Swap chain present failed. I keep getting it, even on very loose settings, which previously have worked. So my suspicion is because some runs work, and then I do a rerun, and then it doesn't work. I get this error. And only in Timespy, so Firestrike manages just fine. And there seems to be an issue, maybe in the drivers. So I reinstalled the drivers. I updated them to the latest version. And I chose a clean install, but I may have to use DDU to uninstall drivers properly and then reinstall. So something is a bit strange with Timespy. Sometimes it works, and sometimes some runs it just crashes pretty much. Yeah, in the first two tests. But the CPU. So the strange thing is that the CPU frequency might be high or low, doesn't matter. I don't crash now in the CPU test. And then I also have lowered RAM frequency and North Bridge frequency. I still get this. So I might have to, I don't know, maybe something got corrupted during some overclocking. May have to run SFC scan now or something. And yeah, but also perhaps run DDU and then do a clean driver install. So, but the scores that I've managed to get, so I ran this now 2 times, and the first time it worked fine. I in Timespy I had 4515 MHz on the core, 2017 North Bridge, bus 96, memory at 2049. Yeah, and I ran it the first time. I got 2156 points, so off by 1 point from the maximum that we have achieved. And yeah, and then I did a rerun, and I got this error. So it's very strange. Something's a bit something's not right here with the Timespy test. So for instance, I will run the Firestrike and just to make sure it doesn't crash. And I had the CPU downclocked to 4.4 gigahertz instead of 4.54, and still the same issue. And it doesn't crash in the CPU test either. It crashes in the graphics tests, and the error we get is somehow linked to the driver, the graphics driver. So yeah, very strange. Okay, so all the tests finished. Yeah, 5951. A bit away from our 6014, but we are at slightly slower speeds. Still a good score, but no issues. And yeah, Anyway, so I will investigate further, but still, we got 6,014 points. We crushed that 6,000 point barrier on a GTX 950 paired with an AMD 7850K, and that's good enough for me for now. And I will investigate, try some driver uninstalls and stuff like that, and hopefully we can stabilize the Timespy benchmark. So yeah. Hi again, everyone. So as you might know, we had some issues with Timespy crashing, and I ended up going into safe mode. I ran SFC scan now command, no issues found. I deleted the AMD and NVIDIA drivers, since I have had an AMD card in this system before. I also DDU'd the NVIDIA drivers, pulled out the network cord, rebooted, installed the NVIDIA drivers, and the network cord I pulled out so that Windows will try to install some old driver from Windows Update first. And reinstalled the drivers, the newest ones from NVIDIA, and reran Timespy, and look at that. We got a huge run. We had 2157 max previously, and now we have 2174, so 17 points. And I'm still running the same settings as for Firestrike, but then I lowered the B clock 1 MHz, so it dropped 1 step on the RAM, the CPU, and the North Bridge. So this is great. And if we have a closer look at the numbers, we can see that the gains were had at the GPU side. The CPU had exactly the same score as before running the DDU, so very consistent. So I want to do a rerun and see if after DDU, if this is more stable, because this is the first run and it was okay, and we got a new highest world record score, but will this actually work for a rerun, or do we still have that instability in place? So let's find that out now. It doesn't seem like we crashed, which is great, because previously we couldn't get 2 runs consecutively in Timespy without crashing. And we got 2156, so a bit lower than the first run, but I mean, that's variance. And we can see that 2162 is the same score for the CPU that we got previously, in the previous 2 runs, and the graphics score is just a bit lower. So this is great. 850 and 195. Yeah, let's try 875 now. That was the highest without artifacting, I believe. We managed to pull off and run this again. Okay, now we got the error again. So we had 2 runs. That's interesting. So 850. And let's try it again. Maybe it wasn't only the drivers, but I know that I didn't get 2 consecutive runs before running DDU and reinstalling the driver. Yeah, no, it doesn't like it. Okay, so something is a bit off with the Timespy, at least. But yeah. Okay, but I think that since we saw the same behavior on settings that obviously should have worked, there's something with Timespy, or yeah. But anyway, we got a new highest, and I will save these settings as the ones for running Timespy, and we'll keep an eye out for this error. Of course, I can reinstall 3D Mark, but yeah, or maybe something happens in driver when we set the settings through precision. So yeah, maybe. So I'm thinking I will set the 875 in precision and do a restart, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, we are rebooted and are now running 875 for the mem right off the reboot. So let's see what happens this time. Okay, we crashed again, same error. So maybe 875 isn't okay for Timespy after all. 850 worked 2 times previously, so I suppose since 875 isn't really running, let's try 870. Just want to see if I can revive Timespy. Yeah, so I'll keep trying off camera here, and I will let you know the results. So I'll be back shortly. Yeah, so I did some testing, and it's a bit hard to find settings that work with Timespy, because it seems to be working and then it stops working. But I had one profile in my BIOS that I called bench OK, and I run it now, and it's okay, and it produces decent numbers. So 2146 points I got from the run, and the best we had was 2174. And so I think that the plan is now to run the bench OK, and the bench OK, we can inspect the settings of it. It's not too aggressive, but it's still 4.471 gigahertz on the CPU cores. It's a 104 megahertz B clock, and north bridge of 2080, pretty high. And then yeah, the RAM is 970, so that's 1940 megahertz. So it's a bit lower than we previously had, but it seems to output decent numbers. And I'm thinking that okay, we can run it. Let's say we swap the GPU for 960 or something. Then we can run the bench OK profile and bench until the GPU says stop. And then I also have saved a Firestrike profile, which is the most aggressive in BIOS, which isn't stable in Windows for any long time periods. And I also saved a Timespy profile in BIOS, which we can activate for Timespy, so it runs at least a good run. And that's the settings that we achieved 2174 with. So those will be experimental, and then we can start off by being stable up until the GPU no longer can run with the settings that we set on the GPU overclock. And then we can go to BIOS and activate Firestrike or Timespy profile and try to get the edge there, get a good run, which hopefully will pass, and it should give us, or give the prerequisites for getting a top score. So let's compare a bit 2174. Previously we compared the Firestrike score. So let's go to results. CPU 7850K, GPU 950, Timespy. So there it is, 2174, and the score submitted by someone else below that was 1958. So that's a huge jump, a really big jump. So 2174. Let's compare this to a GTX 960 with the same CPU. 2174. So the top score is 2432. So 2432 minus 2174. That's 258 points only. And this score was set by some user without no name on May 13th, 2017. So 2174 what ranking would that be? 2174. Yeah, exactly the same score as also some user without a name. So yeah, it would be at place 58.
We had many failed attempts, and Timespy showed to be a bit of a hassle. But on the other hand, after many retries and failures, we managed to post a new world record score for Timespy as well. And in the previous video, we did so for Firestrike, where we got finally over 6,000 points. So that's all great, and yeah, my plan now is that these scores are currently our final scores for the GTX 950. But there will be one last video, I believe a very much shorter one, where I would like to conclude our findings and efforts and achievements for the GTX 950 on the AMD7850K. We overclocked both the system itself and the GPU, but I thought that it would be pretty interesting to summarize and maybe create some charts to see how much extra points and performance percentage wise we achieved. So until next time, I will try to summarize it all in a few charts, and we will have a look at what all these 16 or 15 parts of overclocking adventure of the GTX 950 has gained us. And yeah, so look forward to that in the next video. So until then, I would like to thank you all for watching my videos and these overclocking series for the GTX 950 and the AMD7850K, as we try to break records in 3D Mark for Firestrike and Timespy. It has been great fun, and also I see that this channel now has 20 subscribers, and that's pretty much 20 more than I would ever have imagined. So a huge thank you to all, and look forward to the next video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.